Dr. Jim Tucker works at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies as a reincarnation researcher. He has a database of about 2,000 cases of children who seem to remember past lives. Some of these children's memories have been verified to match in detail the lives of people who have died, suggesting the memories are genuine. The Division of Perceptual Studies is a privately funded part of the university's School of Medicine, and it is a place where the scientific method is used to investigate apparently paranormal phenomena. It was founded by the late Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist who systematically studied reincarnation cases starting in the 1960s, traveling far and wide to investigate. Jim Tucker worked with Stevenson and has taken over where Stevenson left off. I visited Virginia to meet with Dr. Tucker and his colleagues. I started my conversation with Dr. Tucker by clarifying the basic terminology. I'd noticed he prefers terms such as survival over reincarnation in his work.
There are a lot of connotations with reincarnation and religious doctrines and so forth associated with it, which our cases don't typically speak to, like the question of karma or whatever else. Our cases, stated most conservatively, they provide evidence that some young children have knowledge of events that happened in the past, and their experience of that knowledge is that they are memories that they went through themselves, the events that they went through themselves. And the simplest explanation is that they're recalling a life they actually lived.
Dr. Tucker starts his work with the memories children report having from past lives. I asked him if he's worried that the children or the parents may be making it up. Such a case recently had some publicity. A young man said he was pushed by enthusiastic adults to make up a story about going to heaven when he almost died in an accident as a child.
With our cases, we don't ever accept anything on faith if we don't have to. So sure, children may fantasize about all kinds of things, including past lives. The question is, do the things that they say match with the life of somebody in the past? So we check and see, and in the strongest cases, it would have been impossible for the child or even their parents to have committed fraud because the information was so hard to come by.
Dr. Tucker works some days doing his reincarnation research, and other days doing more conventional psychiatric work. I wondered how his colleagues outside of the Division of Perceptual Studies react to his work.
Well, it's hard to say. They're at least tolerant of it. And some people are certainly very interested in it. I'm sure some people are not. But, I also contribute to the School of Medicine and the Department of Psychiatry in other ways, in more sort of mainstream ways. So I think people can respect me even if this work isn't something that they would devote any time to, but they at least, can tell that I'm a serious-minded person.
I asked him if he found it difficult to have his work taken seriously on a larger scale in the academic community.
It helps, quite frankly, to be at a renowned university that people respect, and I'm assuming they let us keep doing this work because if they look at it, they see that we're trying to approach it in a serious-minded way.
I asked him to tell me about the analysis he's been conducting on his extensive database of cases of children who remember past lives.
We've studied 2,500 cases, and we've got this database where we code each case on 200 variables. So with each case contributes to that database, and we can see patterns from the group of cases that you can't necessarily see on an individual level. So that would be what we call an unsolved case if we're not able to match it up to somebody who actually died. We have known for years that more boys talk about past lives than girls, and we wondered why that is, particularly since, I mean, these kids often start at a very early age, and girls tend to be more verbal earlier than boys, so you think there might be more girls. But anyway, with the database, I think we figured it out, which 90% of the kids talk about a past life as a member of the same sex. So when we say more boys talk about these cases than girls, we're saying that more of the previous personalities were male than female. And with the database, when we split up the cases, we see that a natural death is 50-50. It's in the unnatural deaths where there are more males. And in our collection, I think I've got this right, I think it's 73% of the unnatural deaths are male. When I looked online for statistics about unnatural deaths, I found this 5 years of statistics in the US, and it was 72% of unnatural deaths are male.
Many of Dr. Stevenson's and Dr. Tucker's outstanding cases involve children remembering traumatic deaths or experiences in past lives. Sometimes the children even have birthmarks that match the wounds from their past lives. I asked Dr. Tucker if he has a theory as to how a past life wound could physically appear on the body of a baby in the present life. How does the mind imprint a mark on the body?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a puzzling phenomenon, and I think it has to be something other than literally the physical injury. It's hard to see how that would carry over to another life, even if you accept these cases. But we know that specific images in the mind can sometimes produce very specific effects on the body. So, for instance, there are what's called stigmata cases where someone will pray intently to Jesus and then develop what appear to be wounds like the ones that are described with Jesus in the Bible. Or there's this well-known case where a man, when he was recalling a very traumatic event where he had been tied up, he developed what looked like rope marks on his arm. If the consciousness does carry on, then it might carry the imprint of that memory with them to the developing fetus, and then cause the fetus to develop something very similar to what the previous person experienced.
Dr. Stevenson did much of his research in Asia or sometimes Africa and other regions. Dr. Tucker has decided to focus more on cases in the United States.
Well, one benefit is that with some cases, there are more records available for verification than there are in Asian Village. Another advantage is that I think people criticized Ian's work, where if you're just finding cases in cultures with a belief in reincarnation, then could it just be a cultural phenomenon, that culture creates this fantasy that kids have had a past life? But now we've got cases here in the United States, which is in a culture without a belief in reincarnation, in families without a belief in reincarnation. So whatever the cause of it is, it's not cultural beliefs that are driving it here in the U.S. So I hope that it may be easy for people to dismiss cases from halfway around the world, that it's harder to do that when it's people right here.
Some people try to remember past lives through regression treatment, through hypnosis, but Dr. Tucker doesn't study these memories.
Yeah, I mean, one problem with hypnotic regression is that hypnosis itself is just such an unreliable tool. I mean, even for memories of this life, where there are times where someone can be hypnotized and have this amazing recall, like license plate number at a crime scene or whatever. But there are a lot of times where the mind just fills in the blanks, and then once that's happened, it's very hard for somebody to tell if it was a memory or just a fantasy during hypnosis. With the hypnotic regression cases, there have been plenty of them where there are clear historical absurdities that people are thinking that they're remembering. There have been some cases where the person has been re-hypnotized and asked, where did you get this material? And it turned out it's from a book that they had read years before and completely forgotten about. This process is called cryptomnesia. So with the vast majority of cases, there is really no reason to think that they are actually connecting to a past life. But there are occasional exceptions. I mean, there are a very small number of cases where there was verification of some very obscure material, but those are completely overwhelmed by the vast majority where there's nothing like that.
If some children can remember what a previous life was like, can they also remember what it's like to die?
Well, some of the kids do talk about that. About 20% of the kids will talk about events between lives, and that can include dying. And then, I mean, the reports vary, sort of like with near-death experiences, but some of them will talk about sort of leaving their body and floating up, and sometimes seeing other spirits floating up also. But it may well be that to some extent it can be individualized. But some of the kids do talk about going to other realms, and then they may talk about being led to their next parents or choosing their next parents. So it really seems to vary. Yeah.
I wondered if his research had affected how Dr. Tucker views his own mortality.
Well, I've become persuaded over the years that there does seem to be more than just the physical world, the physical reality, that there is this consciousness piece that's separate. And with that being the case, I don't see any reason to think that consciousness would be completely dependent on the living brain, the physical brain, that it could continue after the brain dies. So, you know, I'm hopeful. I'd still like to put it off as long as possible, but I'm hopeful that after I die, that you know, have new experiences.